Hey lovelings, it's me, Allison Gray, and this is UnMinding. UnMinding is my project where I talk about cult recovery. In my last video, I gave an overview of the unminding process, which is my catch-all term for the internal work involved in cult recovery or addressing fundamentalism and other cognitive distortions. So for this video, I thought I'd open up to you guys about the honest reality of being an unminder. And for me, that means someone who actively avoids identifying with a group, a movement, a cause, labeling myself as anything, letting other people label me or assume that I'm a representative of anything. After years of examining and challenging my old patterns and behaviors, I personally have come to the conclusion that I should avoid ideological identification or IDing with ideas. The reason I am critical of ideological identification is not only because of my own personal experiences, but because from what I've observed of many spiritual and political and all sorts of groups, is that it tends to have the effect of reducing a person's humanity in their own eyes. It is sort of a form of self-objectification. Another reason that I think ideological identification can tend to be not a productive thing in terms of one's self-development is because it tends to have a biasing or solidifying effect. So once someone calls themselves a thing, it just sort of automatically becomes more difficult to entertain ideas that come from people who don't ID with the same ideas. Now, instead of continuing to elaborate on what I mean by ideological identification in this video, I'm going to trust that you understood and absorbed everything I just said, and I'm going to continue on with this sort of rant, knowing and trusting that you will understand what I'm saying sort of intuitively or be able to pick up on context clues. If anything I say is unclear, feel free to ask me all the questions in the comments, and all questions are fair and valid. One annoying common thing that happens when you try to explain where you stand on standing on things is people will just not compute and try to force you into a label as if you just need to be educated. Oh, you don't understand. You are a feminist. You just need to understand why you need to call yourself one. And people will rarely give you the benefit of the doubt that you have put thought into trying to remain neutral or detached from a group, or if it's not that they're not giving you the benefit of the doubt, it's because this way of living is so uncommon. Basically, embarking on this journey has been a choice to become misunderstood 24/7. But thankfully, that's not a feeling I'm unfamiliar with. I mean, in every group I was ever part of, I was a minority to the main population. Being a vegan, I was very misunderstood. Being a rad femme, I was very misunderstood. So now it's just a continuation of my life as a very misunderstood person. Everything I'm saying about unminding and avoiding IDing with ideas, all of this is stuff I came to on my own. I am not speaking for anyone but myself. To have no role models forces you to take full responsibility for every thought that crosses your mind, and forces you to seek as many perspectives as possible when encountering new information. Instead of knee-jerk accepting what you hear from someone because you've established trust with them as an authority figure, now you have to do the work of actively going and looking for perspectives from other people who you otherwise wouldn't have looked into and don't necessarily respect. When I say I have no role models, I mean I really don't. A lot of the time when you go looking for people who are kindred spirits in this sense, they'll call themselves skeptics, or it's assumed that you're looking for atheist lines of thinking or something, but I even consider those ideologies. Skeptic tends to have a connotation of its own, and so does atheist, and so does agnostic. And what I'm attempting to do personally is be as removed from all forms of identification with ideas as possible. That even means questioning the questioners, the people who immediately come to mind when you think of free thinking or open-mindedness. Again, this will all come in future videos. I'll happily expand on that because I'm sure a lot of people are not accustomed to hearing someone say that they consider atheists ideological, but I do. So I gave up role models and I gave up groups. A lot of people don't even realize that they have a group that they're immersed in, because when you're immersed in it, you don't know you're in it, like a fish in water. How do you describe water to a fish? But when I stopped calling myself a rad femme, a lib femme, any kind of feminist, I realized how much I had taken for granted that if I posted a certain idea on social media per se, I'd automatically have this many likes, this many comments agreeing with me, friend requests, blah, blah, blah. And now I can't count on that anymore. There is no more comfort zone of the echo chamber. While all of that might seem like I'm saying, oh, this sucks so much, the hidden benefit in not having a group to fall back on all the time is that you no longer have to answer to anybody. I don't owe anyone an explanation for why I wear makeup again or why I might wear a certain kind of outfit. There definitely is a sense of autonomy that's been restored since taking on this practice. I no longer feel this 24/7 itch to debate people. That was another thing I didn't realize was rooted in ideological identification. When you ID with ideas, when your self is rooted in and enmeshed with a belief system or a group, so your self is contingent upon the approval and disapproval of the group, which is constantly shifting the goalposts and constantly sending you mixed messages. The desire to constantly affirm yourself and prove yourself right is just like a 24/7 buzz in your head. So I was always inciting debates, jumping into debates, carrying them out for hours on different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, like anywhere I saw an idea that contradicted my idea would drive me nuts. Like I couldn't, there's a meme that's like, someone is wrong on the internet. That's what it felt like every time I saw an opportunity to debate. The stakes weren't just, oh, let me prove this person wrong. The stakes were, I have to constantly perform how good and right I am. And that's exhausting. And now that I'm not going around looking for fights basically 24/7, I am so much more relaxed. To the point where I've gotten off social media completely for periods at a time in the past year or so, because once the need to debate and prove my point all the time was gone, that was like 90% of my social media involvement right there. Now, if only I could let go of the need to take selfies. One challenge I didn't foresee on this path is how difficult dating would be. So I am bisexual, and actually that's a whole video right there. Between being bisexual and being mixed race, I feel sometimes like I am a physical incarnation of the concept of the gray area. The same sort of black and white thinking that you ram up against when you're trying to talk with ideologues is the same black and white thinking that you'll get from people who don't believe bisexuality is a thing, or who don't believe that mixed race people experience racism. So anyway, now that I've started dating women, I mean, I knew it would be hard, but if you're bisexual and non-ideological and you don't call yourself a feminist and you're transcritical and you're looking for a girlfriend, may the fucking force be with you. I'm not exaggerating. I have gotten into like days of talking with a woman only for her to find out that I've written transcritical pieces and then message me and say, I'm no longer interested because you're a TERF, stuff like that. Even though I'm not a TERF. Last year I was in a relationship with a woman who was very trans affirming. You might wonder how the hell that worked, where I was dating someone who was super into trans rhetoric when she knew that I wasn't. And basically it was a sort of like don't ask, don't tell situation. When it came up, it would just get uncomfortable and one of us would change the subject. And then after the relationship, being the kind of spiteful person she is, she made her actual opinion of my opinions very clear on social media, and that sucked. So now I've got it like in the back of my mind that moving forward with dating, people might just pretend to be okay with how you've chosen to approach your cult recovery and not actually respect it at the core. And I guess I carry a sort of paranoia because of her that my choice to be an unminder is not something people are willing to like meet me where I'm at with. And if you have to hide your thoughts and censor yourself around someone, that's just not a healthy relationship. But I find that women tend to be more ideological, specifically about feminism and trans rhetoric, which is unavoidable in lesbian and bisexual women's spaces. Given the nature of trans rhetoric, it tends to be something that directly challenges every notion of womanhood that every woman has. And so it's not something I run into when I date men. So I also dated a guy last year. It was not quite a relationship, but like a situationship. What I liked about this guy was that he was what I'd call a natural unminder. He was a very curious person. He would actively seek out perspectives he wasn't familiar with to try to understand all sides of pretty much any issue, politically, spiritually. With him, because of an overarching pattern of conflict avoidance, I did worry in the back of my mind that maybe his neutrality on certain issues wasn't necessarily a principle-based neutrality, but a conflict-avoiding neutrality. And this isn't a dig at him. This is something that when you're embarking on this path of being an unminder, unfortunately, you are going to run into a lot of people who think of themselves as objective and rational and neutral, but it might actually be coming from a different place, not from an attempt to be more psychologically free and nuanced, but from a fear of jumping into a debate, or it might come from a place of comfort with their privilege that they don't want to challenge. That's why so many people agree with the quote, if you have chosen neutrality, or if you are neutral in, what is this fucking quote? Of course, my phone heard everything I said. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. I don't agree with that for the most part, but with this particular dating situation, and I'm sure with future situations, this is probably a concern I'll have to keep at the forefront of my mind when most people call themselves neutral. It might be from a place of unexamined privilege, and I don't like using that word, but it's the best word I know how to convey what I'm saying to who my audience tends to be. My social life is lit. I actually wrote about this on the blog version of UnMinding. I made a New Year's resolution to stop choosing my friends based on shared beliefs and start cultivating friendships that were based on mutual respect, mutual love, mutual interest in each other, shared hobbies, like things that had nothing to do with ideology. Because up until that point, up until I made that resolution, I thought I was like cursed to not have friendships that worked. I couldn't quite figure out why it was that I couldn't seem to sustain friendships for very long, until it occurred to me that all the friendships I had that were long lasting and healthy were the friendships that had nothing to do with politics or spiritual beliefs or any sort of ideaing with ideas. Whereas the friendships that would burn out very quickly and dramatically and in an ugly way tended to be with ideologues. Now I find myself connecting with people in a sensory way, like going to shows with people, going out dancing, going out to try new food. And when I was mostly surrounded by ideologues, whether in the vegan community, Radfem community, whatever, every conversation would come back to the shared ideology. and all the anger and the bitterness and defensiveness that went with it. And it was very hard to get to know people in a true sense. And one day it occurred to me, like, this was when I was a rad femme. I was like looking around at my social circle and thinking, none of them even know my favorite color. And none of them have even asked. And obviously it's not about literally my favorite color, but the point that I'm getting at is that there was no interest in who I was outside of whether we all agreed with each other on everything or not. It's not friendship. And now I can honestly say I feel surrounded by love and genuine, nurturing people. And it's such a beautiful change. That's got to be my favorite part of this unminding process, is actively avoiding letting a friendship become one-dimensional and only have a single perspective. And holding myself accountable here, the problem with my social circle in the past wasn't just the people around me. As an ideologue myself, I was very hard to talk to. I was very judgmental. I was very arrogant. I had been told a lot in the past that I made people feel like they had to walk on eggshells around me. You don't want to be that person who makes your own friends feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you. Once I started releasing this conditioning to go seeking out debates and converting people and judging people and categorizing people, I feel that I'm a better friend now without ideology, and I feel like I'm surrounded by better friends now. And my gratitude for both of those things cannot be overstated. I also just feel more, this is a cliche, kind of corny word, but I feel more free. I can think whatever I want now. I approach new ideas with excitement. I read a person's perspective and sit back and go, huh. And in the past, it might have been like, if that made sense. I don't feel like I'm under surveillance anymore, like I have to answer to anybody. I feel more flexible in the mind. Like if I come across a difficult idea, it doesn't ruin my day. This is like night and day from who I was before. And I'm just all around more content and more calm. And happier is tricky because I don't feel that my mood necessarily is contingent upon how ideological I am. That is a contributing factor. But as for depression and anxiety, one thing I will say is I no longer feel like it's my fault or some sort of sign of impurity when I deal with depression or anxiety, which I feel like some ideologies will push that on you and say, well, if you're dealing with that, it's because you're not walking with God, or some will go as far as to say it's because you're demon possessed and shit like that. And those are things I no longer have internalized, and the relief I feel from that is indescribable. Now when I experience a mental health issue, I feel like I approach myself with more love and understanding and compassion than before I started this unminding work and started educating myself about how the mind operates, why we develop certain cognitive biases and psychological defenses, and learning how to release those defenses has been probably the best gift I've ever given to myself, and which is why I want to pay it forward with this YouTube channel and give that same gift to you all. And it's yours to take if you want it, but if you don't, that's cool too. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. I still consider this channel in its infancy, so let me know if you have like video requests, kinds of things you want me to talk about under the umbrella of cults and cultism, and I will do my best. If you like what I do, please like, share, comment. The engagement really helps this channel grow, and most of all, please subscribe and keep your eye out for future videos. Love you so much, lovelings.